A sound cracked through the cafe air when she slammed her phone on the table, the edge grazing my wrist. The sting was small, but the message behind it wasn't. "Look at this, another troll. Why are all the guys on these apps so ugly?" she snapped, her voice sharp enough to slice through the chatter around us. "Her name isn't the one you think. I'll call her Mara now, and I'm Lily. We're both barely 20, still figuring out who we are, still pretending we already know." Mara pushed her phone toward me. Faces flashed across the screen, some shy smiles, some awkward haircuts, some ordinary boys in ordinary shirts. Nothing cruel, nothing grotesque, just people. "They're all below me," she muttered, folding her arms like a shield. I didn't want to say anything at first. I could feel my pulse thumping in my throat. That familiar pressure of knowing the truth might bruise someone you care about. But she kept going, louder now, mocking a guy's height, another's haircut, another's crooked smile, until the table felt too small for both of us. "Show me," I said quietly. She did, and the truth settled heavy in my chest. They looked like her, same energy, same vibe, same level of ordinary that the world gives most of us at that age. "Mara, these guys are in your league," I whispered. Her head snapped toward me so fast my heart skipped. "What did you just say?" The room seemed to shrink around us. A chair scraped sharply against the floor behind us, the sound slicing through my nerves. Mara's eyes were wide, stunned. Not hurt yet, just offended that I had stepped out of the script she expected me to follow. "You think I look like them?" she asked, her voice shaking with a kind of indignation that made my stomach twist. I could see the heat rising up her neck, and for a moment I wished I could take the words back, soften them, fold them into something less sharp. But the truth was already out. It hung between us like steam off a boiling pot. "Mara," I said slowly, "you said yourself you don't match with the guys you find attractive. Maybe that means something." She scoffed, grabbing her iced latte so hard the cup dented. "That just means the apps are trash. I know what I look like. I'm way above these guys." A group at the next table paused mid-conversation. I felt every pair of eyes in the cafe flicker toward us, then away again. Mara didn't notice. She was too busy spiraling. "You're supposed to hype me up," she hissed. "I'm supposed to be honest," I whispered back. The words landed in the exact wrong place. She shoved her chair back again, louder this time. "So you think I'm average? That I'm delusional? That's what you really think of me?" Her voice cracked on the last word, and something in me softened, not because she was right, but because I could see the small, scared part of her hiding under all the bravado, the part that hated being alone, the part that wanted someone to pick her, want her, choose her without hesitation. "Mara," I tried again, "you say you want love, but you keep turning away every person who might actually give it to you." She blinked fast like she was fighting tears, then leaned in with a sharp whisper. "You know what? Maybe you're just jealous." The words hit harder than I expected. My spine stiffened. That was her way. Attack before you get wounded. But it didn't make the sting any softer. I forced out a breath. "I'm not jealous. I don't want to watch you sabotage yourself." Mara stood, grabbing her phone, her purse, her pride, all three shaking. "I'm done. Enjoy your mediocre standards, Lily." And then she walked out, leaving me with 2 coffees, a dented cup, and a truth that felt heavier than any argument we'd ever had. She didn't slam the cafe door when she left, but the quiet click felt louder than any explosion. For a few seconds, I just sat there, watching the condensation slide down her untouched drink. The cafe noise seeped back in, milk steaming, chairs shifting, someone laughing too loudly, but none of it reached me. I felt suspended like the air had thickened. I gathered my things slowly, trying to breathe past the knot in my throat. When I stepped outside, the chill hit my arms first, then my chest. I spotted Mara instantly. She wasn't far. Just a few steps down the sidewalk, pacing in tight circles, her phone pressed to her ear. "No, Mom, she was being awful," she said, wiping at her eye with the back of her hand. "She literally said I'm average." Her voice wavered between anger and something softer, something like shame. Cars passed. A bus hissed to a stop. People walked around her, throwing glances, but she didn't care. She never cared when she felt wounded. "Mara," I said gently, approaching her. She stiffened. "I have to go," she muttered into the phone, then hung up without waiting for a reply. We just stood there, the wind brushing cold across our faces. A loose strand of hair kept whipping against her cheek, and she pushed it back with an irritated flick. "You could have lied," she murmured. "That's not what you want," I replied. Her eyes flashed up to mine, searching, panicked. The bravado from earlier had drained out of her like someone opened a valve. "I just want someone good," she whispered. "I want someone who actually wants me." "Who's not?" She swallowed. Disappointing. A long silence stretched between us, woven with all the things she never admits. "I know," I said softly. "But wanting something doesn't make it appear, and tearing down everyone who tries won't bring the people you can't reach any closer." She flinched, then looked away, rubbing her thumb against the zipper of her purse like she needed something solid to ground her. "I'm not ugly," she finally said in a cracked whisper. "I never said you were. But you think I'm not enough. That's not true either." She blinked quickly, fighting the sting. "Then why does it feel like you see right through me?" I exhaled. "Because I do. You're my friend. And I know when you're hurting, even when you try to hide behind being picky or annoyed or superior." Her jaw clenched. "I'm not superior. You pretend to be, but that's just fear wearing makeup." She looked away, swallowing hard. A car horn blared somewhere behind us, making her shoulders jump. This wasn't about men on a screen. It never was. "I hate being alone," she whispered, and the truth was finally out. I stepped closer. "Then stop pushing away the people who want to stay." For a moment, she stood there, trembling, like someone trying to hold herself together with nothing but stubbornness. "Maybe," she murmured. "You're right, but it still hurt." "I know." A breath, a pause, a tiny collapse of her shoulders. "Can we go somewhere else and talk?" she asked quietly. I nodded, and for the first time all afternoon, she didn't try to outrun the truth. Mara walked beside me without speaking, her arms wrapped tightly around herself as if she were cold, even though the sun had begun to warm the pavement. Every few steps she kicked a loose pebble, sending it skittering ahead of us. The sound was small but sharp, like her thoughts ricocheting inside her chest. We ended up at the small park near our old high school, the one where we used to sneak iced coffees during exam week. She sat on a bench and immediately pulled her knees up, resting her chin on them, a posture so defensive it made my heart ache. "I know you think I'm mean," she said, her voice low. "I don't think you're mean," I replied. "I think you're scared." She paused, then gave a humorless laugh. "Everyone's scared." "Not like this," I said gently. Her eyes flickered, but she didn't deny it. She dug her nails into the denim at her knees, breathing through her nose as if holding back something heavier than tears. "When I look at those guys," she finally said, "I see settling." Settling for what? For less than I want, less than I deserve. "And who told you you deserve more?" I asked quietly. She hesitated. Her shoulders tightened. A tiny tremor ran through her fingers. "My ex," she whispered. "He always said people stare at me because I'm pretty. He used to tell me I could do better, get anyone I wanted. And when he left, he said I should aim higher next time. Her voice cracked. "I guess I believed him." A slow breath left my chest. "Mara, he wasn't building you up. He was setting you up to crumble." She looked away quickly, blinking hard. "Doesn't matter. It still feels real." A group of kids ran past us, shouting, chasing each other with neon sneakers. The noise filled the space between us. Mara pressed her forehead to her knees, hiding her face. "What if I match with someone normal?" she whispered, "and he leaves me too?" Ah, there it was. The root, the bruise under every complaint. "He didn't leave because you weren't enough," I said, leaning forward. "He left because he wasn't." Her shoulders loosened a fraction. The wind rustled through the trees above us, scattering tiny leaves at our feet. "Mara," I continued softly, "you're not in a league. None of us are. You're just a person, wanting love, wanting to be seen, wanting to feel chosen. And that's okay. But the world won't match your vulnerability if you bury it under judgment." She lifted her head slowly, eyes glossy. "So what do I do?" "You start small. You start honest. You stop calling people ugly just because you're afraid they won't want you." Her breath trembled. "And if they still don't?" "Then you grieve it, and you try again. But not like this." A tear slipped down her cheek. She swiped it away quickly, as if ashamed of being human for even a second. "Can you stay?" she asked in a tiny voice. "As long as you need," I said. She nodded and leaned into me. Not fully, not comfortably, but enough to mean something. Enough to show a crack in the armor she'd worn all week. This wasn't victory or resolution. It wasn't transformation. It was simply the beginning of her admitting she was hurting. And sometimes that's the only doorway to anything real. Mara stayed close as we walked toward the quieter side of the park, where the trees grew denser and the late afternoon light softened into something almost forgiving. She brushed her hair behind her ear, a small, shaky movement that told me she was still unraveling inside. A jogger passed us, the gravel crunching beneath his shoes. Mara flinched at the sound. It was subtle, but I caught it. She'd been jumpy ever since the cafe, as if every sound was a reminder of things she didn't want to hear again. We sat on a second bench, farther from the noise. She stared down at her sneakers, tapping one heel against the other, a restless rhythm. Her voice, when it came, was thin. "Do you ever feel like everyone else is ahead of you?" I nodded slowly. "All the time." "Even the people you don't think are, well, better than you?" she asked. There was no judgment in her tone this time, only fear. "Yes," I admitted, "especially them, because it makes you question if you're the one who's stuck." She pulled her knees up again, curling into herself. "I hate that feeling." "I know." She took a long breath, then let it out like she'd been holding it for days. "When I called those guys ugly," she said quietly, "I wasn't really looking at them." I turned to her. "Who are you looking at?" "Me," she whispered. Something tightened in my chest. She wasn't being dramatic. She wasn't being cruel. She was finally being honest. I thought if I pretended I was better than them, I wouldn't have to feel like nothing about me is enough to keep anybody. My heart sank a little, not out of pity, out of recognition. "Mara," I said softly, "you don't have to earn love by being perfect." She wiped her nose with the back of her hand, embarrassed. "I don't want to be average, Lily." "No one does, but average isn't an insult. It's just human." She pressed her palm to her forehead. "I don't know how to be human, not when it comes to dating. I only know how to pretend I'm okay." "And are you?" She didn't answer. Silence did the answering for her. A dog barked somewhere behind us, chasing a frisbee. A woman laughed, calling its name. Life went on around us, but Mara looked trapped inside a small, invisible room with no windows. "You're not a bad person," I told her gently. "You're just terrified someone will choose you and then realize you're not what they wanted." Her breath hitched. She didn't look at me. "Couldn't. That's why you reject people first," I said, "before they get the chance." She covered her eyes with her hands. "God, that's exactly what it is." A tear slid between her fingers. She let it fall. "I don't want to be like this anymore." "You won't be," I said. but you have to let go of the act. I don't know how. I reached over, touching her elbow lightly. Start by being honest with the next guy who treats you kindly, even if you're scared. She nodded slowly, swallowing the lump in her throat. For the first time since she downloaded the apps, she looked less tense. Not healed, but softer. What if I try to match with someone I would have dismissed before? She asked cautiously. Try, I said. Give them space to surprise you. She exhaled long and shaky, like someone finally loosening a knot that had been tugged too tight. Okay, she whispered. I can try. For a moment, we just breathed in sync. Then she leaned her shoulder against mine, light, uncertain, and let herself be quiet. Not perfect, not superior, just Mara. She walked beside me in that slow, careful way someone moves when they're afraid one wrong step will make everything spill out again. The sidewalk was warm from the late sun, but her arms were wrapped tight around herself like she couldn't feel any of it. Every so often, she brushed her fingertips over her sleeve, a restless pattern she probably didn't even notice. We turned toward the quieter street behind the park. The noise faded, the air steadied, Mara's voice barely carried. Last night I couldn't sleep, she said. I kept thinking, if what you told me is true, then maybe I'm not... She stopped as though the word itself betrayed her. Special. A small ache pressed against my ribs. I slowed down to match her steps. Mara, I said, you don't become less special just because someone else doesn't see it the way you wish they would. She shook her head. You don't get it. I spent years convincing myself I had to be above average, that being normal meant being unwanted. A gust of wind pushed a strand of hair against her cheek. She didn't brush it away. She just stared at the ground like she was searching for proof of something, maybe the version of herself she thought she had to be. My mom used to tell me not to drop my standards, Mara whispered. She said if I didn't look perfect, no one would even glance at me. That I had to act untouchable, because if I didn't, people would treat me like I wasn't worth anything. Another piece of her cracked open. That wasn't love, I said gently. That was pressure dressed up as protection. She breathed hard through her nose. I don't know how to undo it. I don't know how to want something real without feeling like I'm settling or failing. I reached out, touching her arm lightly. She flinched. Not from fear, but from the shock of someone being gentle in a moment she expected judgment. You're not failing, I said. You're just tired of performing. Her throat tightened. She blinked fast. If I stop performing, will anyone want me for me? Someone will, I said. But they can't find you if you're hiding behind someone you're not. She looked up at me, eyes raw and unguarded. There was no bravado left. No sarcasm, just a girl who had been taught she needed to shine unnaturally bright to deserve even basic affection. What if I try different next time? She asked quietly. What if I stop dismissing people before I even know them? That's how something real begins, I replied. She let out a fragile breath. Okay, I'll try. I don't know if I'll be any good at it, but I'll try. For the first time all afternoon, her shoulders eased, her voice steadied, and that thin layer of panic she'd been wearing like a second skin began to loosen. She tucked her hair behind her ear and almost smiled. Not a performance, not a mask, just a beginning. A few days passed before she brought it up again. We were sitting on the steps outside her apartment building, the concrete still warm from the afternoon sun. She kept nudging a loose pebble back and forth with the toe of her shoe, her movements tight and nervous. I did something today, she said finally. I looked at her. She avoided my eyes, chewing lightly on her thumbnail. I matched with someone, she whispered. A car door slammed across the street, making her jump. She laughed at herself, a thin, shaky sound. God, I'm acting like it's a marriage proposal. What's he like? I asked. She hesitated. Normal. Kind of cute. He sent a nice message. Nothing creepy, nothing weird. And and I didn't dismiss him. She swallowed. I sat there staring at his profile, waiting for that voice in my head to tell me he wasn't good enough, but it didn't show up the same way. She lowered her hands to her lap. Her fingers were trembling. I think it's because of what you said, about performing. The breeze caught her hair again, brushing it across her cheek. This time she pushed it away gently instead of snapping at it. When I looked at him, she continued, I didn't compare him to the men I think I should want. I just looked. And he seemed like someone who might actually be kind to me. That matters, I said softly. She nodded, eyes glassy. I don't know if he'll like me back, and that terrifies me. But I also don't want to keep rejecting everyone just to avoid being rejected. That's courage, I said. That's you choosing something real. She let out a breath that sounded like release. We're going to talk tonight, she whispered. Just a simple chat. I'm scared I'll mess it up. You won't, I said. Just be honest, not perfect, honest. She leaned back against the stair railing. Letting her shoulders sink into it, her whole body seemed softer, quieter, less like armor, more like skin. I'm not sure I know how to be honest with someone new, she murmured. Start with one sentence, I said. One small truth. She looked at me then, and for the first time in a long while, I saw her without the shield, without the posturing, without the fear disguised as pride. I hope he sees me, she whispered. He will, I promised. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She jumped again, then pulled it out with trembling hands. A message lit the screen. It's him, she said, voice barely above a breath. She didn't open it right away. She placed her hand over her heart like she needed to steady it first. Whatever happens, I said quietly, you're doing the hardest part. She nodded, swallowing hard. I'm trying, she murmured. For once, I'm actually trying. And in that small, vulnerable moment on the steps, something shifted. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet turning. A door opening where a wall used to be. The sky was already dimming when we finally stood up to leave the steps. The streetlights flickered on one by one, washing the sidewalk in a soft amber glow. Mara held her phone in her hand the entire walk to my car, her fingers pressed so tightly around it that her knuckles looked pale. You don't have to open it in front of me, I said gently. I know, she whispered, but she didn't let go. When we reached my car, she leaned against the door and stared down at the screen. The message preview glowed faintly through the glass. Her breath hitched. I'm scared it'll be something awkward, she said, or something boring, or something that proves I'm trying for nothing. And what if it's something good? I asked. She closed her eyes for a moment, as if letting the possibility settle inside her chest. Then she unlocked her phone. I watched her face, not the screen. Her eyes moved slowly as she read, then again as if making sure she hadn't imagined it. Something trembled in her expression, something fragile, uncertain, but undeniably warm. He said he liked my smile, she whispered. And he asked how my day was, and he spelled everything right. I couldn't help but smile. You like that? I really do, she admitted. I'm tired of people who don't try. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. The glow from the phone lit the underside of her jaw, making her look softer than I'd seen her in months. What do I even say back? She asked. Tell him the truth. She hesitated. The truth feels exposed. Being seen always does, I said. She took a breath and typed slowly, carefully, like each word mattered. He's sweet, she murmured as she typed. I didn't expect to feel anything this quick. You're not falling for him, I said lightly. You're just letting yourself feel. Same thing sometimes, she said, almost smiling. She pressed send. The moment the message flew off her screen, she pressed her hands against her face and groaned. Oh my God, what if that was too much? What if I sounded desperate? What if... You didn't, I said, touching her arm. You sounded human. A car rolled by with music thumping, the bass vibrating against the pavement. Mara flinched again, but then she laughed at herself, a soft, breathy sound. "I'm a mess," she whispered. "You're trying," I corrected, "and that's braver than pretending." She lowered her hands. Her eyes were glassy but steady. "When he replies," she whispered, "can you stay? I don't want to be alone for the first one." "I'll stay," I said. She let out a slow breath and leaned the side of her head against my shoulder. Not for comfort, for grounding. "Thank you," she murmured. And for the first time, she wasn't performing confidence or curling into pride. She was just a girl who wanted connection and finally had the courage to reach for it with open hands. We sat in my parked car for a long moment, the air warm and still. Mara kept her phone balanced on her knee, her fingertips hovering near it like she was afraid to touch it again. The quiet between us wasn't uncomfortable, just thick, expectant. A held breath waiting for something small but important. "I feel ridiculous," she whispered. "You feel human," I answered. She looked out the window, watching a couple walk past on the sidewalk, their fingers intertwined loosely. Something soft flickered across her face, longing maybe, or envy, or just the ache of wanting something she wasn't sure she deserved. "My mom always taught me to be the one who got chased," she murmured, "not the one reaching out." Her voice sank, but I don't think she ever realized how lonely that made me. "She taught you fear," I said gently, "not confidence." Mara rubbed her thumb along the edge of her phone. "Maybe I've been calling people ugly so I wouldn't have to admit that I'm scared of being rejected. If everyone else is the problem, then I never have to look at myself." A soft knock sounded, her phone vibrating against her knee. The screen lit up. "He replied," she breathed. She didn't open it. Not yet. She pressed her palm to her forehead, steadying herself. "This is so stupid," she whispered. "It's just a message." "It's not just a message," I said. "It's the first time you're choosing something real." Her chest rose and fell in a sharp, shaky rhythm. Then she tapped the screen. The message was simple, short, gentle. He said he was glad she matched with him. He asked if she had a favorite place in the city. He added a small note about being nervous, too. Mara's lips parted. She read it twice, then again. "He's not pretending," she said. "He's just being himself. And you like that." "I do." She typed slowly, carefully. No pretense, no manufactured charm. Just a girl trying to speak without the armor she'd worn for years. When she finished her message, she let the phone rest on her lap. "I didn't think I'd feel something like this," she whispered. "Not this soon." "You're not falling," I said gently. "You're opening." She leaned her head back against the seat, staring up at the car ceiling like she was seeing through it. "I've spent years thinking I needed to be above everyone," she said. "And now, I just want to be understood. You're allowed to want that." She turned toward me, her eyes steady. "Do you think this could become something real?" "I think it already is," I said. "Not because of him, because of you." Her breath caught. A single tear slid down her cheek before she could stop it. She wiped it away quickly, but the softness lingered in her eyes. "I'm trying," she whispered. "And it shows." Her phone buzzed again. She didn't panic this time. She smiled, small, cautious, but real. That smile told me everything. She wasn't healed. She wasn't sure. She wasn't ready to leap. But for the first time, she wasn't running. Her phone kept buzzing in these soft, hesitant intervals, like he was thinking carefully before each message. And each time the screen lit up, I could see something shifting in her, a quiet thawing that wasn't dramatic but unmistakably real. We drove a few blocks before she spoke again. Her voice was low, thoughtful. "You know what feels strange?" she said. "He doesn't make me feel like I have to be anything." "That's not strange," I said. "That's healthy." She gave a short, shaky laugh. I don't think I've ever done this. Without strategy. Without overthinking every word. That's because this isn't a performance. She bit her lip, glancing down at her phone. He said he gets nervous meeting new people. He said he sometimes worries he won't be enough. Something softened in her gaze. I watched her breathe out, long and slow. I never thought someone honest like that could make me feel safe. The streetlights passed over her face in soft waves of amber and shadow. For the first time since we started talking that afternoon, she didn't flinch at the noise of passing cars or the hum of the city. Her body seemed more grounded, less ready to collapse. He asked if I wanted to get coffee sometime, she whispered. And do you? She hesitated, then nodded. I do, but I don't want to screw it up. You won't, I said. Just be yourself. Her smile faltered. What if myself isn't enough? Mara, I said gently, the people who made you feel that way were wrong. She looked down again, running her thumb over the edge of her phone as though memorizing the feeling. What if I like him? She whispered, the words fragile enough to shatter. Then you'll handle it, I said, bit by bit. She turned her head toward the window, watching a group of friends laughing outside a convenience store. Something flickered in her expression, an ache, but also a longing she'd finally stopped burying. I've spent so long pretending I didn't want things, she said quietly, or acting like I deserved more than I ever reached for. But maybe what I really wanted was just something sincere. Her phone lit up again. She didn't hesitate this time. She opened it with steady hands. He said he'd understand if I wasn't ready, she murmured. He said we could just talk until I felt comfortable. That's rare, you know. I know, she said softly. It scares me how much I like it. Her breath stilled. A small tear gathered at the corner of her eye. Not from pain this time, but from the unfamiliar warmth of being seen without judgment. I'm not used to kindness, she whispered. You'll learn, I said. She nodded, brushing the tear away before it could fall. Her shoulders dropped in a slow release, like she'd finally stopped bracing for impact. I want to try, she murmured. Not because I'm lonely, but because maybe I'm ready to stop performing. And for the first time, her voice held something new, something fragile, but promising. Hope, not fear. We pulled into the parking lot behind Mara's building. The sky now dipped into a deep blue, that early night shade where everything feels quieter than it is. She didn't move to open the door. Instead, she sat there with her hands folded around her phone, her breath steady but lined with nerves. Do you know what I realized today? She said softly. I waited. All this time, I kept saying I wanted someone out of my league, someone who looked a certain way, acted a certain way, gave me this feeling of winning. She paused. But none of that ever made me feel safe. Her thumb brushed the edge of her screen again. She wasn't fidgeting anymore, just tracing the shape of something new. I think I was chasing the wrong kind of validation, she whispered, the kind that fades the second someone looks away. She turned to face me. Her eyes were clearer now, less tangled in fear. And this, the way he talks, the way he listens, it's different. It doesn't make me feel like I'm standing on a stage. That's why it matters, I said. A car drove past us, headlights sweeping over her face. She didn't flinch this time. She just breathed, deep and slow, like she was letting that small brightness sink in. I'm not used to being liked for something other than how I look, she said. It feels foreign. Then it's about time, I murmured. She let out a soft laugh, quiet, unsteady, but real. I almost sabotaged this, she admitted. I almost convinced myself he wasn't good enough, that this wasn't good enough, just so I wouldn't have to face the part of me that thought I'm not good enough. She shook her head, looking down. That's messed up. No, I said gently. That's human. Her phone buzzed once more. She glanced at it and smiled. Small, warm, the kind of smile that has nothing to do with ego and everything to do with being seen kindly. "He asked if I got home safe," she whispered. "He didn't have to do that. That's who he is." She nodded, breathing in carefully. "I want to protect this. I don't want to ruin something before it even starts." "Then treat it like something real," I said. "Not a test, not a competition, just two people talking." Her shoulders relaxed. She leaned back into the seat, letting herself settle into the quiet. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I know. But I'm also hopeful." She looked out the window again, watching the porch lights glow across the lot. "I don't want to be the girl who calls people ugly so she doesn't have to face her own reflection," she whispered. "I want to be better than that, kinder than that." "You already are," I said. "You just forgot for a while." She breathed out slowly, almost a sigh, almost a release. Then she closed her eyes for a moment, letting the gentleness of the evening wrap around her. "I think I'm ready to try," she said again, this time with a steadier voice. "Really try." And in that dim parking lot, with nothing grand happening around us, something profound shifted. Quiet, careful, but unmistakably real. She wasn't convincing herself anymore. She believed it. When Mara finally stepped out of the car, she paused with her hand on the doorframe, looking back at me as if she wasn't entirely ready to be alone with her thoughts yet. The hallway lights of her building flickered overhead, casting long shadows across the pavement. She tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, her voice quiet. "Can you walk up with me?" she asked. "Of course." We crossed the lot together, the gravel crunching under our steps. She held her phone close to her chest now, not like a shield, but like something she wanted to keep warm. When we reached the stairwell, her pace slowed. Halfway up, she stopped and leaned against the rail, breathing through something invisible, but heavy. "I didn't think one conversation could shake me this much," she whispered. "You're not shaken," I said. "You're waking up." She let out a soft, uneven laugh. "Feels the same." We continued up the next flight. On the landing outside her door, she hesitated again. This time, she wasn't scared, just thoughtful, grounded in a way that made her seem older than she had that afternoon. "You know what's strange?" she said, looking down at her keys. "When I called those guys ugly, I never actually looked at them. Not really. What were you looking at?" "My fear," she said. "And everyone who ever taught me I had to be more than I was." The wind brushed through the stairwell, carrying a faint smell of someone's dinner cooking nearby. Mara closed her eyes for a moment, absorbing the quiet. "I don't want to be that girl anymore," she murmured. "I don't want to treat people like they're beneath me just because I'm scared they'll never want me." "You're not that girl," I said softly. "You just forgot who you were before all the noise." She nodded, eyes shining but steady. "He messaged again," she whispered. "He asked if I made it upstairs okay." A small smile pulled at the corner of her mouth, gentle, shy, nothing like the forced confidence she'd worn earlier. "Do you want to answer him?" I asked. "I do," she said. "But for the first time, I want to answer slowly, carefully, like it matters." "It does." She looked down, typing one quiet line, her fingers no longer trembling. "I want to give this a chance," she said when she was done. "Not the polished version of me, just me." "You're allowed to." She sighed, not the exhausted kind, but the kind that comes after finally putting down a weight you didn't realize you were carrying. "Thank you," she whispered, "for telling me the truth even when it hurt." "I care about you," I said, "and I want to see you choose things that make you feel whole, not hollow." She swallowed hard. "I hope I don't mess this up." "You won't," I said, "because you're not pretending anymore." She stepped forward then, wrapping her arms around me in a sudden tight hug. Not delicate, not hesitant, not armor, just gratitude. just softness. Just a girl finally letting herself feel something without flinching. When she pulled back, she wiped her eyes quickly and unlocked the door. "I'll tell you how it goes," she said, smiling in that new, vulnerable way. "I'll be here." She nodded once more before slipping inside, leaving the hallway quiet and dim, except for the lingering warmth of something real finally beginning. That night, after I drove home, I sat on my couch with the lamp turned low and waited, not because I expected her to message, but because I knew she would. Mara never lets her mind sit quietly for long. And sure enough, a little after 11, my phone buzzed. He asked if we could talk on the phone, just for a few minutes. I could almost hear the tremble behind her words. "Are you going to?" I typed. There was a pause. Then, "I want to, but I'm scared I'll say something dumb, or too honest, or not honest enough." I smiled at the screen. "Just breathe before you answer him," I wrote. "And don't try to be impressive." Her reply came almost instantly. "That's the hardest part." I stretched out on the couch, imagining her pacing in her living room, phone in hand, rehearsing what she might say. The version of her who mocked strangers on dating apps felt so far away now, like a shell she'd been living inside. A few minutes later, another message appeared. "Okay, I'm doing it." God, my hands are shaking. I sat there, phone in my palm, listening to the silence as if I could hear her voice through it. I pictured her clutching the edge of her kitchen counter, or sitting cross-legged on her bed, or standing by the window with the city lights reflecting in her eyes. Half an hour passed before she texted again. We talked. 2 small words, but the weight behind them was enormous. "How did it go?" I asked. It took her longer this time. "Good," she wrote. "Really good. He's gentle and funny, and he didn't make me feel stupid. He said talking to me felt easy. I felt something warm bloom inside my chest. Did it feel easy for you?" A long pause. "Honestly, it felt like the first time in years I wasn't performing." She followed it with another message before I could respond. I kept waiting for the moment I would cringe at myself, or panic, or try to act cooler. But it never came. I was just me. I leaned back, letting her words settle around me. This wasn't about romance. Not really. It was about her choosing vulnerability instead of control, humanity instead of superiority. "I'm proud of you," I typed. The 3 dots flickered, disappeared, returned. She was choosing every word carefully. "I think I like him," she wrote. "Not because he's perfect, but because he's kind. I don't know what to do with that feeling." A soft ache pulled at my chest. "Let it be small," I replied. "Let it grow slow. Let it be real." There was no reply for almost a full minute. Then, "I'm crying," she wrote. "Not because I'm sad. I just didn't know I could feel this without pretending first." I closed my eyes, imagining her curled up on her couch, wiping tears off her cheeks with the back of her hand, the same way she did earlier outside the cafe. And for the first time since this began, she wasn't afraid of what her reflection meant. She wasn't hiding behind cruel words. She wasn't running. She was opening, quietly, carefully, beautifully. The next morning, I heard my phone buzz before the sun was fully up. I reached for it, half awake, expecting a simple update, but her message wasn't simple at all. I woke up smiling. I don't remember the last time that happened. I sat up slowly, letting her words warm the quiet of my room. Outside, a pale strip of dawn was settling along the rooftops. Everything felt hushed, like the world hadn't quite taken its first breath yet. "Tell me more," I replied. She responded almost instantly. We talked until 1 in the morning. Not flirty, not intense, just honest. I could almost picture her, hair messy, legs tucked under a blanket, saying things she never allowed herself to feel out loud. "What did you talk about?" I asked. Another pause then. "Things I don't usually tell people." He asked what I like about being alone. No one has ever asked me that before. I read the sentence twice, letting its simplicity sink in. It wasn't the question that mattered. It was the feeling behind it. Someone seeing her without trying to impress her. Someone curious instead of judgmental. "What did you say?" I typed. Her reply came slowly. I told him I like the quiet. I like not having to be perfect, and I like being able to breathe without worrying who's watching. I exhaled. That was the softest truth she'd spoken in weeks. How did he respond? He said he feels the same. He said he likes when people are real with him, even if it's messy. A small smile found its way across my face. The version of Mara who mocked strangers on apps would have never survived a conversation like that. But the girl she was last night, the one who dropped the shield, who let herself feel nervous and small and sincere, that girl was finally showing through. A second message came. "I don't feel embarrassed. That's new for me." I lay back on my pillow, letting that settle. "Maybe you're finally talking to someone who doesn't need you to be a performance," I wrote. Her typing bubble appeared, disappeared, then came back. "I think that's why I like him. He's not in a league. He's just human. And somehow that feels enough today." I stared at that last line for a long moment. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't dramatic. It was gentle in a way that felt heavier than any confession she'd made so far. "I'm glad," I typed. There was a pause. Then she sent one more message. "Thank you for yesterday. You didn't let me hide, even when I hated you for it. If you hadn't said what you said, I think I would have missed this." I pressed the phone to my chest, letting the quiet of the morning fold around me. Yesterday, she'd walked out of a cafe furious, wounded, defensive. Today, she woke up smiling. Soft changes, small shifts, but real. And sometimes, that's all it takes for a life to open. By late afternoon, she called me. Not texted, called. Her voice was lighter than I'd heard in months, but there was a tremor underneath it, the kind that comes when someone is standing at the edge of something new. "Can you come over?" she asked. I didn't ask why. I just drove. When she opened the door, she wasn't dressed up. No eyeliner, no curated outfit. Just an oversized sweatshirt and soft eyes that weren't performing for anyone. She stepped aside, letting me in, then closed the door with a gentle click. "I think I'm freaking out," she said, pacing toward her kitchen table. A glass of water sat half empty, her fingerprints smudged along the rim. She kept running her thumb over them, like she was trying to ground herself. "What happened?" I asked, sitting across from her. She took a breath. "He asked if I wanted to meet this weekend." Her voice cracked on the last word. "That's a good thing," I said. "I know," she whispered, "and that's what scares me. This is the first time I'm not chasing someone who's wrong for me, or ignoring someone who's right for me. I don't know how to do this." The refrigerator hummed quietly behind us. A car alarm chirped outside. Small, ordinary sounds. But in that moment, they felt too loud for the tiny room we were sitting in. She pressed her palms together. "What if I get close to him and he decides I'm not as pretty as he thought online, or not as interesting, or not as confident?" "It's not your job to impress him," I said. "It's your job to show up as yourself." She blinked fast, as if the idea itself was foreign. "When I showed you those guys on the app," she said, "I thought I was being funny. I thought tearing them down made me feel better about myself. But now it feels cruel, like I was trying to hide the fact that I didn't like who I saw in the mirror." "Mara," I said gently, "you were trying to survive, not succeed." Her eyes softened with something fragile. "I don't want to survive anymore," she whispered. "I want to feel something real." She walked to the window, pulling back the thin curtain. The late-day light poured over her cheekbones, turning her expression thoughtful, almost undone. "He said he's nervous too," she said quietly. "He said he doesn't date much because he doesn't want to hurt anyone." She turned to me, voice breaking open. "I've never met someone who talks like that." "That's why you're scared," I said, because you can't hide behind superiority with someone who isn't playing the same game. She leaned her forehead against the window, eyes closed. I don't know how to let someone see me without the mask. You start with one thing, I said. One small truth you're willing to share. She opened her eyes slowly. And if he leaves, then he wasn't yours. A long, trembling breath left her chest. Not fear, release. I want to try, she said, even if it hurts. Even if I'm not perfect, even if I don't feel special. You don't have to be special, I murmured. You just have to be real. She turned toward me fully, and in the dim golden light, she didn't look like the girl who mocked strangers or chased unreachable men or hid behind polished edges. She looked like someone finally stepping into her own quiet truth. Will you help me get ready? She asked softly. For the date? For being myself. I nodded, and for the first time, she didn't look terrified of what came next. She looked ready. We moved into her bedroom where the late afternoon light spilled across the floor in soft stripes. She stood in front of the mirror, not to admire herself, but to study the expression she wasn't sure she recognized. Her hands hovered at her hips, restless and unsure. I don't know what to wear, she murmured. You don't need anything dramatic, I said. Just something that feels like you, not the version you think men expect. She opened her closet, fingers brushing past dresses she'd once chosen like armor, tight silhouettes, loud colors, things that demanded attention instead of inviting connection. She paused on a simple, soft blue top, worn enough to be comfortable. This one? She asked. That looks like you, I said. She held it against her chest, exhaling slowly. I don't remember the last time I picked something because it made me feel good, not because it made me feel superior. Her voice wasn't shaky anymore, just honest. She pulled the top over her head, smoothing the fabric with light touches. Then she sat at her vanity and picked up a makeup brush, then set it down, picked it up again, set it down once more. I don't want to hide behind a mask, she said softly, but I also want to feel put together. You're allowed both, I said. Balance doesn't make you insecure. It makes you human. She breathed through that for a moment, then chose a tinted moisturizer instead of the full coverage foundation she used to treat like a lifeline, a brush of mascara, a hint of color on her lips, nothing loud, nothing that screamed, just enough to make her feel like she belonged in her own skin. When she finished, she looked at her reflection with something close to disbelief. I look like myself, she said. That's the point. She stepped back from the mirror. Her shoulders dropped into a more natural place, no longer pulled up tight with anxiety. She walked around the room in slow circles, testing the feel of her outfit, her hair, her breath. Then she stopped in front of me. What if he likes this version of me? She asked quietly. What if he doesn't? Both are answers, I said, but only one will feel right. Her throat tightened. I'm scared to want him to like me. That's what makes it real. She nodded, a small, vulnerable movement. Then she walked to the window and looked down at her reflection in the glass, softened by the fading light, shaped by nothing but truth. I used to feel powerful when I rejected people, she whispered. But now, I feel stronger letting someone in. That's growth, I said. She pressed her fingertips lightly to the window pane, as if checking whether she still recognized the girl looking back. I think I'm ready to meet him, she said. Her voice didn't tremble this time. It settled, a quiet certainty, a fragile courage. A beginning that didn't try to be more than it was. She turned toward me, taking one slow breath. Will you stay with me until he texts the time? She asked. I nodded, and for the first time, she didn't brace for rejection. She braced for possibility. We settled on the edge of her bed, both of us facing the small nightstand lamp glowing warmly beside us. Mara kept her phone in her hands, her thumb tracing slow circles across the case. She wasn't spiraling anymore, just waiting, quiet, steady, nervous in a way that felt honest instead of defensive. I used to think dating was supposed to feel like chasing, she said softly, or being chased. But this feels like walking. That's what real connection feels like, I said. Two people choosing to meet in the middle. She nodded, absorbing that. Her gaze lingered on the soft blue top she'd chosen, her breath almost surprised that she could look this calm without the performance she used to rely on. When I think about him, she whispered, I don't feel the need to be impressive. I feel the need to be present. Her phone buzzed, one sharp vibration that made both of us look down. She drew in a breath, not a gasp, not panic, just a held breath full of possibility. He texted. She murmured. Open it, I said. She tapped the screen. The message lit up between us. Hey, I was thinking, maybe Saturday afternoon? Somewhere quiet, coffee or a walk? Whatever feels comfortable for you. Mara read it twice, her lips parting slowly. Then she looked up at me, something bright warming the edges of her expression. He's giving me options, she said. He's trying to make me comfortable. That's someone paying attention, I whispered. Her eyes softened. I'm not used to that. She sat there for a long moment, absorbing the simplicity, the sincerity of the invitation. Then she whispered something that made my heart tighten. I didn't think I'd ever get this kind of beginning. You earned it, I said. She shook her head. No, I let it in. Her phone rested in her lap now, no longer clutched like a lifeline. She looked out the window at the fading light, watching the last colors of the day melt into dusk. This scares me in a good way, she said quietly. That's how you know it matters. She typed her reply slowly, carefully, not out of fear, but with intention. Saturday sounds perfect. Somewhere quiet would be nice. She hovered over the send button for a moment, breathing through the tremble of hope settling under her ribs. Then she pressed it. I just did it, she said. No overthinking, I just said what I meant. How does it feel? She closed her eyes for a second, letting her shoulders drop, letting her heartbeat find its rhythm again. Like stepping into sunlight after sitting in the shade too long, she whispered. I watched her sit in that feeling, soft, unfamiliar, but growing stronger with each breath. She wasn't running away from vulnerability now. She was walking toward it, and it looked good on her. The room felt different after she pressed send, lighter somehow, as though she had opened a window she didn't realize was sealed shut. Mara rested her phone on the blanket beside her and curled her knees up, hugging them loosely. It wasn't the tight, defensive posture she'd had earlier. This one felt reflective. I didn't think I could do that, she murmured. Say yes without agonizing over it for an hour. You didn't force it, I said. You let yourself choose. Her eyes softened, tracing the faint shadows cast by the lamp. He makes it easy to choose. She paused, then added, I'm not used to choosing people who make things easy. You're not supposed to suffer to feel wanted, I said. She let that sit for a moment. Her fingers played with the hem of her blue top, small movements that betrayed the quiet storm happening inside her chest. She wasn't spiraling. She was unfolding. What if he sees me in person, she whispered, and realizes the version of me on the screen looks better? He's not talking to a screen, I said gently. He's talking to you. She looked down, her voice softer now. I spent so long pretending I deserved the kind of men who never wanted anything real. Maybe I thought if I aimed high enough, I could avoid being hurt or avoid feeling ordinary. The word stung her. I saw it in the way she swallowed, slow and tight. You're not ordinary, I said. You're just not unreachable. There's a difference. She met my eyes, searching for something steady. I think I built that unreachable version of myself to protect me, but it kept everyone out, including the people who might have cared. That's what walls do, I whispered. They keep out the bad and the good. Her eyes flickered. She leaned back on her hands, letting the quiet wrap around her like warm fabric. "When he talks to me," she said softly, "I don't feel like I need to be better than him. I feel like we're on the same ground. That's what being in the right place feels like." Her phone buzzed again, not sharp, not jarring. A simple vibration that made her breathe in sharply, not from fear this time, but anticipation. She looked at me, almost smiling. "Can I look?" "You can." She picked up her phone. The screen lit her face with a soft glow. "I'm really glad you want to meet. I've been looking forward to getting to know you better. Let me know what time works for you. I'm flexible." Her breath hitched, but not in panic, in wonder. "He's considerate," she whispered. "He's being thoughtful. He's not pushing. He's not trying to act cool. He just means what he says. Feels different when someone speaks gently, doesn't it?" She nodded slowly. "It makes me want to match his pace, not rush, not hide. Just..." She pressed a hand lightly to her chest. "Be here." I watched her process that, carefully, like someone learning to trust their own heartbeat. "I'm not used to feeling this safe," she said, "even with myself." "You're growing into someone who can handle kindness." Her eyes softened, wet but steady. "That's the scariest part, because it's real." She exhaled, long and slow. "Because it's real," she echoed. And in that small, warm room with her phone glowing softly beside us, I realized something. She wasn't afraid of him. She was afraid of becoming someone who lets herself be loved, but she was already halfway there. The room had gone quiet again, but it wasn't the trembling silence from earlier. This one felt intentional, like she was letting her thoughts settle, letting her heart catch up to whatever was unfolding inside her. Mara held her phone loosely now, no longer clutching it like a life raft. Her breathing had steadied into something deeper, almost peaceful. "I don't want to ruin this," she said softly. "You won't," I answered. She looked at me with a vulnerability so unguarded it almost hurt to see. "You say that like it's simple." "It isn't simple," I said. "It's just possible." She sat with that for a while, staring at the wall across from her as if the answer might appear there. Then she leaned forward, elbows on her knees, her fingers interlaced under her chin. "Do you think I should tell him I'm nervous?" she asked. "Only if it's the truth you're ready to share." She let out a breath that sounded half laugh, half sigh. "Everything feels so new, like I'm learning to walk again." "New doesn't mean wrong," I said. She nodded, looking down at her hands that always moved when she was hiding something, but now they were still. "I used to think dating apps were just windows," she said, "like you scroll through people and choose the best picture, like shopping." She paused, and maybe that's why I felt so empty. I wasn't looking for connection. I was looking for proof. Proof of what? "That I deserved better," she whispered. Her voice cracked on that last word. She blinked fast, trying to keep the emotion from spilling over, but it didn't work. A single tear slid down her cheek. "I don't want to be that girl anymore," she said. "The one who tears others down because she's scared of her own reflection." "You're not that girl," I said softly. "You're the one sitting here right now trying to be honest." She wiped her cheek gently, almost surprised the tear had escaped. "He doesn't know any of this," she murmured. "He doesn't need to, not yet." She nodded. "I want to show up as myself on Saturday. I want to walk in without the edge, without the shield." "That's more than enough," I said. Her phone buzzed again, but she didn't jump this time. She reached for it calmly, like she was choosing the moment instead of reacting to it. "Saturday works for me," she read aloud. "Whenever you feel comfortable, I'm excited to meet you." She stared at the screen with a look I hadn't seen on her before, a quiet mix of gratitude and disbelief. "He's excited," she whispered, "about meeting me." "Of course he is." She closed her eyes, pressing the phone gently to her chest. "I've never felt this before," she said. "This kind of softness." "You're letting someone in," I said. "That's what softness feels like." She opened her eyes and looked at me, and something in her had shifted. A maturity, a steadiness, a courage she didn't have earlier. "I think I'm finally ready," she said. "For the date?" I asked. "No," she said, shaking her head slowly. "For love that doesn't require me to pretend." She rested her phone beside her and breathed out, a long, unguarded exhale that felt like the beginning of something she'd been too afraid to imagine. And for the first time, she didn't look scared of being hurt. She looked ready to be seen. The next evening, I stopped by her place again. She had texted earlier saying she wanted help, figuring out how to feel less like she was walking into an exam. When I arrived, she was sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, surrounded by 2 cups of tea, a throw blanket, and a notebook she hadn't written a single word in. "I thought journaling might help," she said, staring at the empty page, "but I don't know what to put." She tapped the pen against her knee, anxious energy crackling under her skin. I sat beside her, folding my legs the same way. "Write what you're afraid of," I suggested. She hesitated. Then slowly she wrote one sentence in small, almost timid handwriting. "I'm scared he will see me and not stay." Her breath hitched. She stared at the words like they were too intimate to look at directly. Then she wrote another. "I'm scared I will ruin something good without meaning to." Another breath. Then, "I'm scared I won't know how to be myself in front of him." Her hand trembled after the third line. She dropped the pen and wiped her palms on her jeans. "Why is this so hard?" she whispered. "Because it matters to you," I said. She picked the pen back up, steadier this time, and wrote something softer. "I'm scared I will like him." She stopped writing and pressed her fingers over the words as if trying to contain the emotion that spilled out with them. "I never admitted that before," she murmured. "It's brave," I said. She sat back, letting the notebook fall closed. She hugged her knees again, but this time it wasn't defensive. It was grounding. "I don't want to go into this date pretending I'm someone else," she said, "but I don't know what being myself looks like without the extra layers." "You'll find out," I said gently, "with him and with yourself." She inhaled deeply, letting the air settle inside her chest. Then she stood, pacing slowly from the window to the couch, rubbing her arm absent-mindedly. "What if being myself makes him lose interest?" she asked. "Then he was never the right person." She stopped pacing and looked at me, eyes sharp with vulnerability. "Do you really believe that?" "Yes," I said, "because someone real wants someone real." She let that sink in. Her shoulders dropped, softened. She walked back to the notebook and opened it again, not to write, but to hold it like something precious. "He asked if I had a favorite place," she said quietly. "Maybe I'll take him to that cafe on 8th, the one that's always a little too warm but feels like home." "That sounds like a perfect first date." She smiled, slow, genuine. "I want a first date that feels like comfort, not performance." "And you'll have that." She placed the notebook on the coffee table and sat beside me on the couch, leaning her head gently against my shoulder. "You know," she said softly, "I don't think I ever actually wanted someone out of my league. I just wanted someone who wouldn't leave." "You're allowed to want that," I whispered. A long, fragile silence followed, not empty, just filled with the weight of everything she was finally willing to face. She didn't pick up her phone for the rest of the night. She didn't scroll. She didn't analyze his messages. She just sat there, present in her own skin, letting the fear settle beside the hope. It was the closest she had come to peace in a long, long time. Saturday arrived with a soft, muted sky, the kind that made everything feel gentler than it really was. When I knocked on her door, Mara opened it already dressed, already trembling a little, already braver than she knew. She wasn't wearing anything dramatic, Just the soft blue top, simple jeans, and a thin necklace she used to save for occasions when she wanted to feel delicate, not invincible. Today she looked somewhere in between, hopeful, terrified, real. "I feel like I'm forgetting how to breathe," she whispered. "You're breathing," I said, just slower. She shut the door behind her, leaning against it for a moment with her eyes closed. The hallway light skimmed across her cheekbones, catching the tiny shimmer of nerves sitting just beneath her skin. "He texted," she said quietly. "He's already at the cafe. He said no rush." "No rush?" I echoed. But she was rushing, inside. Her fingers tugged at the hem of her top. Her knee bounced once, sharply. She pressed her palm over her heart, feeling its quickening beat. What if I get there and forget how to act? What if I freeze? What if I ramble? What if... "You're not going there to impress him," I cut in. "You're going to meet someone, 2 people, 2 breaths, 2 lives, that's all." She swallowed. "I want him to like me." "That's allowed," I said softly. "Wanting isn't desperation." Her eyes softened at that. She pushed a breath through her lips, shaky but determined. As we walked down the stairs together, she paused on the last step, gripping the handrail like it was the only thing tethering her to the ground. "I used to think looking confident was the same as being confident," she said. "But today, I don't want to look confident. I want to feel calm." "Then give yourself permission," I whispered. "You don't have to be anything else." Outside, the street hummed with quiet Saturday motion. Dog walkers, soft conversations. People holding cups of warm coffee with sleepy morning faces. The air smelled like baked bread from the bakery on the corner. Mara closed her eyes for a moment, letting the breeze brush against her cheeks. It steadied her. Not fully, but enough. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Anything. Do you think he'll like me when I'm not trying so hard?" "I think he'll like you because you're not trying so hard." She nodded once, a tiny surrender to the truth she'd been running from. We walked toward the corner where our paths would split. She slowed her steps as the cafe came into view, its warm lights glowing through the big front window, the familiar chalkboard sign outside that always smudged around the edges. Through the glass, she saw him. Not perfectly, not clearly, just enough, a shape at a small table near the window. Hands wrapped around a cup, posture relaxed, gaze gentle. Mara stopped walking. Her breath hitched, not fear, but recognition. "That's him," she whispered. She stood there for a long moment, letting the sight of him settle into her. "What if I'm not what he imagined?" she asked softly. "You're exactly what he's here for." Her fingers curled around her phone, pressing lightly into the case, like she needed one last grounding point. "Stay until I go inside?" she asked. "I'm right here." She took another breath, straighter now, quieter now. Then she stepped forward. One step, then another. The soft click of her shoes against the pavement sounded like a beginning unfolding gently under her feet. She reached for the cafe door, hand trembling only once. Then she opened it and walked inside. From where I stood across the street, I could see the moment she stepped inside. The cafe door closed softly behind her, and for a second she froze just past the threshold, caught between fear and hope, suspended in that fragile breath before everything begins. He noticed her right away, not with a jolt, not with surprise, just a gentle look, like he'd been waiting for her, not watching the door, but listening for her presence. Mara's shoulders lifted once, then dropped, as if she'd been holding herself tight for so long she didn't realize she could let go. She walked toward him with small, careful steps, fingers grazing the strap of her purse, grounding herself with the simplest touch. He stood as she approached, a small gesture, unforced, respectful. I watched her tuck a loose strand of hair behind her ear, a nervous habit, but she didn't hide behind it. She didn't shrink. She simply existed, soft, human, trembling, real. When she reached the table, he smiled, Not a showy smile, not the kind people practice in bathroom mirrors, a gentle one, a warm one, the kind that says, "I see you," fully. She sat down slowly, and he did the same. They said something to each other, quiet words, simple words. I couldn't hear them from where I stood, but I didn't need to. Her expression told me enough. Her shoulders loosened, her hands unclenched. Her eyes softened as she looked at him, not with panic, but with curiosity. She wasn't performing. She wasn't judging him or herself. She was just there. A server came by and placed a second cup in front of her. She smiled, small but genuine, and thanked her. Her voice didn't tremble this time. She lifted the cup with both hands, letting the warmth seep into her fingers. Through the glass, I watched him lean forward just a little, listening closely. And Mara, who used to use arrogance as a shield, who used to speak loudly to hide the hollowness inside, she leaned in too, not to impress, to connect. Their conversation flowed softly, like two people discovering the same language at the same time. Her smile wasn't the curated, confident one she wore for strangers. It was uneven, almost shy, but bright in a way she couldn't fake. And then I saw something I'd never seen in her before. She laughed. A small, startled sound, like joy slipping out before she knew how to handle it. She covered her mouth, embarrassed, and he smiled, not at her, but because of her. Because she wasn't pretending. She rested her elbow on the table, chin in her hand, eyes warm as she listened. Her entire posture seemed to say, "I'm here now. I'm not running." Minutes slipped by unnoticed. The tension she carried for years drained quietly, like water finding its way out of a cracked shell. I realized then that she didn't need me to stay any longer. She'd walked into that moment alone. She was living it alone. She was becoming someone new, on her own terms. A gentle breeze moved down the street, brushing against my coat. I took one last look through the window. She was still smiling, still soft, still brave. I turned to leave. Behind me, inside the cafe, a girl who once hid behind superiority sat openly with someone who treated her like she didn't need to be anything but herself. And for the first time, she believed it. The afternoon light had slipped into a deeper shade by the time I reached the corner of the block. I turned back once, more out of instinct than worry, and saw the two of them through the cafe window, heads bent slightly toward each other, hands wrapped around warm cups, the air between them soft and unhurried. I kept walking, giving her the space she deserved. By the time I reached home, my phone buzzed, then buzzed again and again. 3 messages, all from Mara. The first one was short. "He's kind." The second came a few seconds later. I didn't feel like I had to impress him. Not once. The third arrived after a longer pause. "I think I like who I am when I'm with him." I sank onto my couch, the room dim around me, the quiet settling like a warm blanket. I could picture her sitting across from him, unfolding in ways she never allowed herself before, letting someone see the pieces she used to guard with cruel words and distance. I typed back, "Tell me everything when you get home." Her reply was almost immediate. "I will, but I'm not ready to leave yet." That told me more than any story she could have written. I set the phone down and let the stillness fill the room. A few minutes passed, then 10, then 20. And somewhere in that quiet stretch of time, I realized something. She wasn't texting because she needed reassurance. She wasn't reaching out because she felt fragile. She was sharing because she wanted someone to witness her becoming. An hour passed before another message arrived. We talked about our favorite places. He told me he gets anxious meeting new people. I told him I pretend not to, but I do too. A beat. He didn't judge me. Another beat. He just listened. It was such a small thing. Listening. But for someone like Mara, who'd once believed she had to earn affection with perfection, it meant everything. I could almost hear her voice as she typed the next message. He asked if I wanted to walk around the block with him. I said yes. I didn't even think about how I looked when I stood up. That line made my throat tighten, not out of sadness, but out of the kind of pride that sneaks up slowly, soft and overwhelming. I texted back, "Are you okay?" A pause. Then, "I'm okay. I'm more than okay. I feel steady. Steady. Not euphoric, not panicked, not performing, just steady." Sometimes the quietest word is the loudest growth. I leaned back and closed my eyes, letting the image settle, the two of them walking beneath the cafe lights side by side, matching each other's pace without trying, speaking gently, breathing normally, being human. It wasn't a grand moment. It wasn't cinematic. It wasn't rushed. It was simply real. And I knew, without a doubt, that she needed this kind of beginning. The kind that didn't burn hot and fast. The kind that didn't flatter her ego or feed her fear. The kind that let her exhale into herself rather than someone else's expectations. Through the quiet of my living room, my phone buzzed once more. He asked if he can see me again. I smiled before I even read the next line. I said yes. By the time Mara finally reached her apartment that night, the sky had fallen into a soft navy blue. She called me before even taking off her shoes. I could hear her breath through the receiver, light, uneven, but glowing in a way I hadn't heard before. "Are you home?" I asked. "Yes," she whispered. "Can you stay on the phone while I tell you?" "Of course." I heard the soft click of her door locking, the muted shuffle of her steps as she moved inside. A moment later, she sank onto what sounded like her couch. "He walked me back," she began. "Not all the way to my door, just to the corner of my building. He said he didn't want me to feel pressured." She paused, letting the weight of that kindness settle. "No one's ever done that for me." "What else?" I asked gently. She exhaled, a slow, trembling release. "When we were walking, I kept waiting for the moment I'd panic, or try to fix my hair, or wonder what he thought of me." She paused, but it never happened. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I wasn't performing. I was just talking, breathing, existing. In the quiet that followed, I could hear the faint hum of her refrigerator, the distant sound of a car outside, the soft, trembling edge of a smile she was trying to hold back. "He told me he liked the way I thought," she continued. "Not how I looked, not how I dressed, the way I thought." Her breath hitched. "Do you know how long it's been since someone noticed anything except the image I was trying to project?" "A long time," I said. "Too long," she whispered. There was a rustle as she pulled a blanket over her legs. She let out a small, stunned laugh. "When we said goodbye," she said softly, "he didn't try to do anything. No weird pressure, no awkward leaning in. He just said, 'I had a really nice time today.' And then he smiled at me like he meant it." I leaned back in my chair, eyes closing for a moment, not because I was tired, but because something about the purity of her voice struck deep. "Mara," I said gently, "that sounds like something good." "It is," she breathed. "It really is." Another quiet settled, but this time it wasn't uncertainty. It wasn't fear. It was fullness. After a while, she spoke again, so softly it almost didn't reach me. "I didn't realize how much of myself I'd lost trying to be someone impressive," she said. "I thought confidence looked like being unreachable. But tonight I felt something different." "What did you feel?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Enough." The word lingered in the air between us, fragile yet complete. Not extraordinary, not superior, not flawless. Enough. She sank deeper into the couch, voice almost breaking. "I think he likes the girl I actually am," she said, "and I think I might like her too." My throat tightened, not out of sadness, but out of a quiet, overwhelming pride. "You should," I whispered. "She's been waiting for you." She laughed softly, wiping at her eyes. "I'm crying again. God, I cry so much lately." "That means you're healing," I said. A long pause. Then, "I want to see him again," she murmured. "Then you should." Do you think it's too soon? No, I said. It's exactly the time it needed to be. Her breathing slowed, softened, settled. I'm going to sleep now, she whispered. For the first time in a long time. I want tomorrow to come. Sleep, I said. You deserve the kind of rest that comes after being honest. Good night, she murmured. Good night. I stayed on the line until she hung up, listening to the quiet, listening to her becoming, listening to the soft echo of a girl who once hid behind cruelty, finally finding her way back to gentleness. When the call ended, the silence felt full, and somewhere in that quiet, I realized the truth. She wasn't terrified anymore. She was hopeful, and that hope, fragile, trembling, but alive, felt like the beginning of something she'd been missing her whole life. A week later, I sat by my window with a cup of tea, the evening light dimming into that soft violet shade that makes everything feel gentler. My phone buzzed once, then again, a third time. All 3 messages were from Mara. You home? I want to tell you something. It's good. I think it's good. I smiled before I even typed back. Come over. 15 minutes later, she was at my door, cheeks flushed from the cold, hair windswept, eyes bright in a way I hadn't seen since we were kids. She stepped inside, closed the door, and leaned against it with a breathless kind of laughter, soft, unpolished, real. How was it? I asked. She covered her face with both hands, shaking her head. Then she dropped them, revealing a smile so startled and sincere it made my heart catch. It felt easy, she whispered, all of it. Being with him, talking, walking, sitting, existing. Her voice softened even more. I felt like myself, and he liked me. She sank onto my couch, pulling her knees up the way she always did when she needed grounding, but this time her body wasn't tense, just full. He told me he had a good time, she said, and then he said something I didn't expect. She folded her hands in her lap, staring at them as though the words were still warm there. He said he liked how I listened, she whispered. Not how I looked, not how I dressed, how I listened. A breath steadied her. I used to think being chosen was about being impressive, she said. But tonight I didn't try to impress him. I didn't try to be above him. I didn't try to outshine anyone. She touched her chest lightly, as if checking the pulse inside. And he still stayed. She leaned back, letting her head rest on the cushion, eyes closed in a kind of quiet disbelief. I didn't know connection could feel like this, she said softly. Warm, slow, kind. I didn't know letting someone see me could feel peaceful. She opened her eyes and looked at me. I'm glad you told me the truth that day, she murmured, even when it hurt, even when I hated you for it. I didn't want you to shrink, I whispered. I wanted you to stop performing. She nodded, a small, grateful movement. Do you want to see him again? I asked. Her smile widened, gentle, steady, sure. I already am, she said. We're getting coffee tomorrow. I told him I like slow starts. He said slow sounds perfect. She looked toward the window, watching the last light slip behind the rooftops. I think I'm finally learning what I actually want, she whispered. Not perfection, not leagues, just someone I can talk to without hiding. She turned back to me, voice soft as a breath, and someone who sees me without the mask. The room settled into a warm hush, the kind that feels like the ending of one chapter and the soft, trembling beginning of another. She stood, pulling her coat around her shoulders, ready to leave but not rushing. At the door, she paused and looked at me with a tenderness that held no fear. I'm happy, she said quietly. For the first time in a long time, I'm happy. She stepped into the hallway. I watched her go, steady, open, unguarded. Someone who no longer needed the shield she once thought defined her. When the door closed, the silence that remained wasn't empty. It was full, warm, alive. A soft echo lingered in the room, settling into the quiet like the last note of a long song. Enough. She was finally enough for herself, and that was all she ever needed to be.